Bank of England boss criticised for asking workers not to demand pay rise, Andrew Bailey.
Here's a summary of the article.
The Governor of the Bank of England has come under fire from unions and earned a rebuke from 10 Downing Street for suggesting workers should not ask for big pay rises to help control inflation. Sharon Graham, the General Secretary of Unite, said workers did not cause Britain's cost of living crisis and should not be asked to pay for it. Enough is enough. We will be demanding that employers who can pay, do pay. Let's be clear. Pay restraint is nothing more than a call for a national pay cut. The Governor's call for restraint comes after Johnson last autumn criticised company bosses for wanting cheaper workers from the EU. Bailey said restricting wage growth was vital for keeping a grip on inflation, telling the BBC's Today programme it would help to stabilise the economy after the turbulence of COVID-19. I'm not saying nobody gets a pay rise, don't get me wrong. But what I am saying is, we do need to see restraint in pay bargaining. Otherwise it will get out of control, he said. Economists question whether workers have sufficient bargaining power to demand bumper pay rises, despite low rates of unemployment, after a steady decline in trade union membership since the 1970s when big pay settlements contributed to higher rates of inflation. People should ask for the biggest pay rise they can get. Wages are a relative price, like any other, and should be left to the markets, he said. Just as real wages go strongly negative, clueless Bailey tells workers it is their fault and need to get lower pay. Even though he won't, public sector workers have had their pay frozen for a decade of Tory rule.
This post received a score of 3,400, with an upvote ratio of 97%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Funny how there is always some reason why workers shouldn't demand increased wages right now. In Canada, we are facing record inflation. The Bank of Canada has been brushing it off for months, telling us it's temporary and a non-issue, so no need to raise interest rates. But now, when our wages start to show signs of rising, it's time to act. New signs of wage inflation may force Bank of Canada's hand in raising rates. The corruption is so flagrant and explicit. Don't forget the 500,000 immigrants Canada let in 2021 and again in 2022, acknowledging that it will provide relief to rising wage inflation for businesses.
1. Higher wages and unionization. 2. More immigration. Pick one. Few have cared as long as the low-skilled and middle class have taken it on the chin. Maybe when they start going for the office jobs is when the upper classes will suddenly wake up to their jobs being taken.
I don't see how immigration means you can't have unionization.
It just makes it more difficult. Especially because the excess of work supply will inevitably lead to decreased wages, and because immigrants tend to be less aware of their rights and more willing to accept worse wages and work conditions than locals, especially if, say, they come from a not-so-well-off background such as a third-world country.
It's things like this that makes me think that the French revolutionaries had the right ideas.
In BBC's Sherlock Holmes, a villain explains that he tests his nefarious plans in UK, because they will tolerate anything and never resist or rebel.
Extraordinary amounts of tea will have to be drunk intensively first, before resistance happens. And then a trip to the bathroom.
Try brewing your tea with salt water. Americans.
Well, no wonder Americans prefer that swill coffee. That's not how you brew tea properly at all.
Greater than well, no wonder Americans prefer that swill coffee. That's legitimately the reason. It goes back to the revolution. Coffee was a little bit cheaper, but it was also distinctly not British, which is what really made it popular. Tea was for Brits and Tories. Patriots drank coffee. They drank mostly liquor, if we're being honest.
I do know the context. Yes, I was just making a joke about saltwater making a bad cup of tea, lol.
Mr. £2,000 a day wants to keep it that way.
At this point they're simply sociopaths.
We know you can't afford groceries right now, but if you ask for more money it'll only make groceries more expensive for the rest of us. You're going to starve anyway, so do so quietly please. Sheesh.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.